I never thought a simple takeout order would be the breaking point in my family. There I was sitting in my parents' living room with my two children, James and Emma, ages 7 and 5. My sister Brooke and her kids Tyler and Ashley were there too. Mom asked Brooke's kids what they wanted from the Chinese restaurant. As my children waited eagerly for their turn, my mother turned to me with cold eyes and said, "Your kids can eat whatever scraps are left in the kitchen. They're not guests here." My sister smirked, adding, "And don't forget, I'm staying all week, so you're covering my meals too." My dad chimed in, "Now go set the table like a good little servant." Their words hit me like a physical blow. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. The drive to my parents' suburban home earlier that evening had been filled with my children's excited chatter. James and Emma loved visiting their grandparents' house with its spacious backyard and the treehouse my father had built years ago. My husband Mark couldn't join us because of a last-minute work emergency, so it was just the three of us. "Mommy, do you think Grandma made those special cookies?" Emma asked from the back seat, her feet swinging rhythmically against her booster seat. "I don't know, sweetie, but we can ask her when we get there," I replied, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. Her blonde curls bounced as she nodded enthusiastically. I pulled into my parents' driveway, noting with annoyance that Brooke had parked her SUV in my usual spot. It was such a minor thing, but somehow it perfectly represented our relationship. She always took what was mine, whether it was physical space, attention, or affection, especially from our parents. When we entered the house, Brooke was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone, barely looking up to acknowledge our arrival. Her children, Tyler and Ashley, were playing a video game at full volume. My parents greeted Brooke's kids with hugs and exclamations about how much they'd grown. My children received quick pats on the head. "You're late, Cleo," my mother said instead of hello. "Only by 10 minutes, Mom." There was traffic on Main Street, I explained, helping Emma take off her jacket. "Well, we've been waiting to order dinner. You know how your father gets when he's hungry." I bit back a retort. This was typical, being made to feel like an inconvenience for the slightest deviation from their expectations, while Brooke could do no wrong. At 34, I was a successful marketing director at a growing tech company. I had worked my way up through dedication and talent, building a stable life for my family. Meanwhile, Brooke at 36 had jumped from job to job, always with a dramatic story about why things hadn't worked out. Yet, somehow in our parents' eyes, she was the golden child. As we settled in the living room, my mother announced we would order Chinese takeout since she was too tired to cook. This despite the fact that she had known for days we were coming for dinner. "Tyler, Ashley, what would you like to order?" my mother asked, phone already in hand. Tyler immediately requested orange chicken with extra sauce, while Ashley wanted beef and broccoli. My children sat up straight eagerly, waiting their turn to order their favorites. James loved sweet and sour chicken, and Emma always wanted dumplings. That's when my mother made her shocking statement about scraps, followed by Brooke's smirk and comment about me covering her meals, and finally my father's demeaning servant remark. The room fell silent. Even Tyler and Ashley looked uncomfortable. My children's faces crumpled in confusion and hurt. "Mom, what are you talking about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Don't be so sensitive, Cleo. You know how it is. Family helps family," my mother replied dismissively. "And some family members help more than others," Brooke added, with a pointed look. That's when I realized the extent of the deception. For months, Brooke had been telling our parents that I refused to help her, financially painting me as selfish and cold-hearted. The truth was the opposite. I had paid her car insurance for the past year, covered her children's summer camp fees, and loaned her money countless times that was never repaid. "James, Emma, put your jackets back on. We're leaving," I said quietly. "Oh, stop being dramatic," my mother scoffed. "If you want to order something for your kids, just say so." "That's not the point, Mom, and I think you know it." As we headed for the door, my father called out, "Where do you think you're going?" "Your sister needs your help this week. She's going through a rough time." I turned back. "What rough time exactly?" "The same rough time she's been going through for the past 20 years. I'm done being the family ATM and emotional punching bag." Brooke's face darkened. "You think you're so perfect with your fancy job and your perfect little family. Some of us have real problems." "Your problems aren't the issue, Brooke. It's how you handle them, or rather, how you expect everyone else to handle them for you." I ushered my confused and upset children out the door, ignoring the protests and accusations being hurled behind us. In the car, James asked in a small voice, "Mommy, why is Grandma mad at us? Why can't we have dinner with them?" My heart broke for my children, innocent victims of a toxic family dynamic I had allowed to continue for far too long. Sometimes sweetie people don't treat others with respect, even people they should love. And when that happens, we need to love ourselves enough to walk away. "But I'm hungry," Emma said, tears welling in her eyes. "You know what? We're going to have an even better dinner. Just the three of us." As I pulled away from my parents' house, my phone began to buzz with texts. I ignored them all. I drove toward downtown away from the suburb where my parents lived. My thoughts raced as I tried to process what had just happened. The cruel words directed at my children kept replaying in my head, fueling a mixture of anger and resolve. "Where are we going?" Mom James asked, his voice small and confused. "We're going to have dinner at Sullivan's," I replied, referring to an upscale steakhouse in the city. "It's a special place where they treat everyone with respect." Emma's eyes widened. "The fancy place with the sparkly lights?" "That's the one, sweetheart." I had only taken my children to Sullivan's once before on their father's birthday. It was definitely not within our normal dining budget, but tonight called for something extraordinary. I needed to show my children that they deserved to be treated with dignity and kindness. My phone continued to buzz incessantly. I finally glanced at it at a red light. 5 missed calls from my mother, 3 from my father, and a stream of texts from Brooke. "How dare you walk out like that? Mom and Dad are furious. Way to ruin dinner for everyone. Always have to make everything about you." The final text from Brooke made my blood boil. "Get back here now. You're being ridiculous." I switched my phone to silent and tucked it into my purse. Tonight was about my children, not about appeasing my toxic family members. Sullivan's was busy for a Thursday evening, but the hostess found us a table near the window. The elegant atmosphere with its dark wood paneling, crisp white tablecloths, and soft lighting immediately lifted our spirits. James and Emma sat up straighter, their eyes taking in everything with wonder. "Good evening. Welcome to Sullivan's," our server said with a warm smile. "Can I start you folks with something to drink?" "Apple juice, please," Emma said immediately. "Make that 2 apple juices and a glass of Pinot Noir for me, please," I added. As we settled in and looked over the menus, I noticed a familiar face at a table across the restaurant. Daniel Richards, my boss, was dining with what appeared to be important clients. We made eye contact, and he gave me a small wave of recognition. "Take your time deciding what you'd like," I told the children. "You can have anything you want tonight." The genuine smiles that spread across their faces were worth every penny this meal would cost. As James and Emma debated between different options, my phone lit up with a notification. Curious, I glanced down to see a social media alert. Brooke had just posted a photo of my parents' coffee table covered with containers from Golden Dragon, our favorite Chinese restaurant. The caption read, "Nothing better than family dinner, so blessed." I zoomed in on the photo and noticed something else. Brooke was wearing a new watch. Not just any watch, but a Michael Kors watch, identical to the one I had mentioned wanting for my upcoming birthday. The very same watch I had shown my mother during our shopping trip last month. My hands shook slightly as I put down my phone. Just then, Daniel approached our table. "Cleo, what a surprise. I didn't expect to see you here tonight," he said warmly. I stood to greet him, trying to compose myself. "Daniel, nice to see you. Just having a special dinner with my little ones." I introduced James and Emma, who politely said hello. "I'm here with the Westfield team," Daniel said, gesturing toward his table where 3 well-dressed executives sat watching us. "They're impressed with the campaign proposal you put together." "That's great to hear," I replied, genuinely pleased, despite my emotional state. "Actually, I was going to call you tomorrow, but since you're here, would you mind joining us for just a few minutes? They have some questions about the digital rollout that I think you'd be best suited to answer." I hesitated, looking at my children. "It's okay," Mommy James said maturely. "We can wait. We're still deciding what to order." "It'll just be 5 minutes," Daniel promised. I followed Daniel to his table, where he introduced me to the Westfield team. What was meant to be a brief conversation turned into a 15-minute impromptu meeting, during which I managed to impress them with my knowledge of their market and my vision for their brand. "Cleo, we've been discussing the expansion into the Western region," said Diane Westfield, the CEO. "The position of Regional Marketing Director will be opening up next month in Denver. After hearing your insights, I think you should consider applying." This was unexpected news. The Western expansion was a major move for our company, and the regional director position would be a significant promotion. "I appreciate that, Diane. I'd definitely be interested in discussing it further," I replied, my mind racing with possibilities. As I returned to my children, I noticed more texts from my parents. The latest one from my father read, "Your mother is very upset. You need to apologize and come back immediately." I put the phone away and focused on James and Emma, who had finally decided on their orders. As we enjoyed our appetizers, I couldn't help but think about the potential job opportunity in Denver. A fresh start in a new city, away from the toxic family dynamics that had been draining me for years. It was a tantalizing thought. Our steaks arrived perfectly cooked and accompanied by sides that made the children's eyes grow wide with delight. "This is the best dinner ever," James declared carefully, cutting his steak into small pieces just as his father had taught him. "Better than Chinese food?" I asked with a smile. "Way better," Emma confirmed, her mouth full of mashed potatoes. As we were finishing our meal, I received an email notification. It was from Jake Brooks' husband, who I hadn't seen in months. The subject line read simply, "We need to talk." That was odd. Jake and I had always gotten along well, but we rarely communicated directly without Brooke involved. I opened the email, quickly curious about its contents. "Cleo, I've been trying to reach Brooke for days. She told me she was staying at her friend Melissa's house, but when I called Melissa, she had no idea what I was talking about. Is Brooke staying with your parents? Please call me. It's important." The email left me confused. According to my parents and Brooke, Jake had kicked her out of their house, which was why she was staying with our parents. But his message suggested a different story entirely. The picture of my family's dysfunction was becoming clearer, and what I was seeing disturbed me deeply. I ordered dessert for the children, needing time to think. By the time we left Sullivan's, I had 17 missed calls and over 30 text messages. My family was in an uproar over my departure, but for the first time in my life, I felt no inclination to smooth things over. Something fundamental had shifted inside me, and there was no going back. Instead of heading back to my parents' house as expected, I drove toward the Lakeview Hotel near downtown. The children were quiet in the back seat, full from dinner and tired from the emotional evening. "Are we going to Grandma and Grandpa's now?" James asked, his voice heavy with sleep. "Not tonight, sweetheart. We're going to have a little adventure and stay in a hotel." "Like vacation?" Emma perked up slightly. "Exactly like vacation. With a pool and everything." As I drove, my mind wandered back through years of similar incidents, each one building upon the last to create the unhealthy dynamic that had culminated in tonight's events. There was my high school graduation, where my parents had left early to attend Brooke's softball game, missing my valedictorian speech entirely. There was my college scholarship celebration dinner, which had been cut short because Brooke had broken up with her boyfriend and needed emotional support. There was my wedding, where my mother had criticized everything from my dress to the venue while praising Brooke's skills as maid of honor despite her showing up late and drunk to the rehearsal dinner. Pattern after pattern of dismissal, of being treated as less than, of having my achievements minimized, while Brooke's smallest accomplishments were celebrated extravagantly. I checked into the Lakeview Hotel, splurging on a suite with 2 queen beds. The children were thrilled by the novelty of the hotel room, temporarily distracted from the confusion of the evening. "Can we go swimming tomorrow?" Emma asked as I helped her into her pajamas. "We'll see, sweetie. First, let's get some sleep." Once the children were settled in one of the beds, I sat on the edge of the other and called Mark. He answered on the first ring. "Hey, is everything okay? I was about to call you. Did dinner run late?" I took a deep breath and recounted the events of the evening, trying to keep my voice steady so as not to disturb the children who were drifting off to sleep. "They said what to our kids?" Mark's voice rose in anger. "That's it, Cleo. This has gone on long enough. Where are you now?" "We're at the Lakeview. I couldn't go back there, not after that." "You did the right thing. I'm coming home first thing tomorrow morning. My meeting just wrapped up and I'll catch the earliest flight back." "No, don't cut your trip short. We're okay, really. My voice faltered. "Cleo, listen to me. This isn't about one bad night. This is about years of them treating our family like second-class citizens. It stops now. His protective anger was comforting, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this situation. Mark had witnessed the dynamics with my family for years and had always been supportive of whatever approach I wanted to take. But even his patience had limits. There's something else I said and told him about Jake's email and the discrepancy in Brooke's story. I don't know what's going on, but something doesn't add up. Call Jake, Mark suggested. Find out what's really happening. After we hung up, I checked my email again. There was a new message from the Westfield CEO formally inviting me to apply for the regional director position in Denver. The email mentioned a significant salary increase and relocation assistance if I got the job. I allowed myself a moment to consider the possibility of a fresh start in a new city, away from the toxic dynamics that had defined so much of my life. Then I opened my laptop and logged into my personal email account. I navigated to a folder labeled Family Documentation, a digital journal I had been keeping for years, recording incidents of favoritism and mistreatment. It wasn't something I had told anyone about, not even Mark. Part of me had always felt guilty for keeping such records, as if I was being petty or vindictive. But another part knew that without this documentation, I would continue to doubt my own experiences, continue to be gaslit into believing that I was overreacting or misremembering. The folder contained hundreds of entries dating back to my college years. Reading through some of them now, I felt a surge of validation. I wasn't crazy. The pattern was real and consistent. I clicked on another folder, this one containing recordings. Over the past year, I had occasionally recorded particularly contentious family interactions on my phone. It wasn't something I was proud of, but I had reached a point where I needed concrete evidence, even if just for myself. I played the recording from earlier that evening, the cruel words about my children even more shocking when heard again. I hadn't planned to record tonight's dinner, but after years of similar incidents, I had developed a habit of hitting record whenever I sensed conflict brewing. My phone rang, displaying Jake's number. I stepped into the bathroom to take the call, closing the door to avoid waking the children. Jake, I got your email. What's going on? Where's Brooke? Is she with your parents? His voice was tense, worried. Yes, she's been staying there. She told them you kicked her out. There was a heavy silence, then a deep sigh. That's not what happened, Cleo. Brooke left on her own after I confronted her about money missing from our accounts. A lot of money. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Over $20,000 withdrawn in the past 3 months. When I asked her about it, she exploded, packed a bag, and left. She's been giving me the runaround ever since, claiming she's staying with friends. She told my parents you were abusive and kicked her out, I said quietly. What? Jake's voice cracked. Abusive, Cleo, you know me. You know that's not true. I know, I assured him. I never believed that part. We talked for nearly an hour. Jake revealed that Brooke had been fired from her job 2 months ago, but had been pretending to go to work every day. He suspected she might be gambling again, an addiction she had struggled with years before. I'm worried about the kids, he said. She won't let me speak to them. Your parents won't put them on the phone when I call. They're at my parents' house now. They seemed okay earlier, but can you check on them? Make sure they're all right. I'm going to drive up tomorrow, but it's a 6-hour drive from Charleston. I promised to do what I could and hung up my mind, reeling from this new information. Returning to my laptop, I searched through old family emails, looking for any clues about Brooke's financial situation. What I found instead was something even more disturbing. 3 years ago, when I had asked my parents for help with my remaining student loans after a medical emergency had depleted my savings, they had told me they couldn't afford to help. We're on a fixed income now, my mother had written. We wish we could help, but we just don't have extra money. Yet in an email to Brooke, from the same period my father had written, the $60,000 for your down payment has been transferred. Don't worry about paying us back anytime soon. We're just happy to help you get into your dream home. I sat back, stunned by the revelation. While I had been working 3 jobs to pay off my student loans during college, my parents had been saving to buy Brooke a house. The inequity was so blatant it took my breath away. My phone buzzed with another text from my mother. Your father and I are extremely disappointed in your behavior tonight. Brooke is going through a difficult time and needs our support. You owe her an apology. For the first time, I felt no urge to respond. No compulsion to explain myself or smooth things over. The evidence of their favoritism was too overwhelming to deny any longer. I crawled into bed beside my sleeping children, drawing comfort from their peaceful breathing. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations and decisions, but tonight I allowed myself to mourn the family relationship I had always wanted but never truly had. The next morning I woke to the sound of Emma giggling as she jumped from one hotel bed to the other. James was already watching cartoons with the volume turned low considerate, even in his excitement. "Good morning, my loves," I said, sitting up and checking my phone. 23 missed calls, 15 voicemails, dozens of texts, most of them accusatory and demanding. I put the phone down without responding to any of them. "Can we go swimming, Mom?" "Please," Emma begged, bouncing on the edge of the bed. "After breakfast," I promised. "Why don't you two get dressed while I order room service?" The children cheered at the prospect of breakfast delivered to our room, another special treat in what had become an unexpected adventure for them. After a leisurely breakfast and an hour of swimming in the hotel pool, I knew I couldn't avoid the situation any longer. I needed to go back to my parents' house to collect our overnight bags and face whatever confrontation awaited. "We're going to Grandma and Grandpa's to get our things," I explained as we drove. "We might not stay very long." "Okay." "Are they still mad?" James asked. "They might be, but that's not your concern, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements that have nothing to do with you." When we pulled into my parents' driveway, I noticed Jake's car wasn't there yet. I had texted him our plans and he had said he would arrive around noon. It was only 10:30. "Wait here for a minute," I told the children, leaving them in the car with a movie playing on the tablet. I walked to the front door, using my key to enter without knocking. The house was quiet except for voices coming from the kitchen. I followed the sound to find my parents and Brooke sitting at the table, all three looking up in surprise when I appeared. "Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence," Brooke said sarcastically. "Where are your children?" I asked, ignoring her tone. "Tyler and Ashley are in the basement watching a movie," my mother replied. "Where are yours?" "In the car. I came to get our things." My father stood, his expression stern. "Cleo, this has gone far enough. Your behavior last night was completely unacceptable." "My behavior," I repeated incredulously. "You told my children they could eat scraps. You called me a servant, and you're upset about my behavior." "You're twisting our words," my mother said dismissively. "You've always been so sensitive." "I recorded it, Mom." I held up my phone. Every word. The room fell silent. Brooke's smug expression faltered. "You," what my father finally asked. "I recorded what you all said to me and my children last night. I've been recording a lot of our interactions lately, for my own sanity." "That's an invasion of privacy," Brooke sputtered. "You can't just record people without their knowledge." "Maybe not, but it sure helps me remember exactly what was said when everyone tries to gaslight me later." My mother rose from her chair, hands trembling slightly. "I don't know what's gotten into you, Cleo. Ever since you married Mark, you've changed. You think you're better than us now. This isn't about Mark. This is about years of being treated like I'm less important than Brooke. It's about watching my children be treated as less worthy than hers." My father tried a different approach. "Honey, you know your sister is going through a difficult time right now. With Jake becoming abusive." "Jake isn't abusive," I cut in. "That's a lie Brooke told you. I spoke to him last night. He didn't kick her out. She left after he confronted her about stealing money from their accounts." Brooke's face drained of color. "He's lying. He's trying to turn you against me." $20,000, Brooke. That's how much Jake says is missing." My parents exchanged concerned glances. "And that's not all," I continued. "Jake says Brooke was fired from her job 2 months ago. She hasn't been going to work. She's been pretending." My mother turned to Brooke. "Is this true? You told us you were taking time off because of stress." Brooke's face crumpled, then hardened. "Of course you'd believe her over me. Perfect Cleo with her perfect job and her perfect little family." My phone rang. It was Jake. "He's here," I said, answering the call. "We're in the kitchen." Moments later, Jake walked in looking tired and worried. Tyler and Ashley came running up from the basement at the sound of his voice, throwing themselves into his arms. "Daddy, we missed you," Ashley cried, clinging to his neck. "I missed you too, sweetheart," Jake said, his voice thick with emotion. "What are you doing here?" Brooke demanded, standing up. I came for the kids, Brooke, and to talk to you about what's really going on. What followed was one of the most difficult and revealing conversations of my life. Jake laid out evidence of Brooke's deception bank statements showing withdrawals emails from her former employer confirming her termination for suspected embezzlement and text messages from Brooke herself admitting she had made some mistakes with company funds. They can't prove anything. Brooke insisted, but her defiance was crumbling. It was just borrowing. I was going to pay it back. With what money? Jake asked quietly. Our savings are gone, Brooke. My father looked devastated. Why didn't you come to us if you needed money? I did, Brooke cried. I've been asking for months, but you said you couldn't help anymore. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Because we've already given you so much. We took out a second mortgage to help with your legal consultation fees. This was news to me. A second mortgage. On this house? My father nodded grimly. We had no choice. Brooke said she might face criminal charges if we didn't get her a good lawyer. And the $60,000 for her house down payment 3 years ago, I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Was that from a loan, too? My parents at least had the grace to look embarrassed. How did you know about that? My father asked. I found the emails. From the same time you told me you couldn't help with my student loans because you were on a fixed income. My mother's face flushed. That was different. You were always so independent, so capable. Brooke needed more help. So, you punished me for being responsible. I laughed without humor. Do you have any idea how hard I worked to pay off those loans? 3 jobs during college. No spring breaks, no study abroad. While Brooke was partying and failing classes that you paid for over and over again. Jake stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder in solidarity. I had no idea things were this bad. Brooke told me your parents only helped with a small portion of the down payment. I would never have agreed to accept so much money. Just then, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Daniel following up on the job opportunity in Denver, asking if I could come in for a formal interview the following week. The timing felt significant, a door opening just as I was finally confronting the painful truth about my family dynamics. I need some air, Brooke suddenly announced, pushing past us toward the back door. Brooke, wait, my mother called, but she was already gone. Let her go, Jake said wearily. She does this whenever she's cornered. Disappears for a while, then comes back expecting everything to be forgotten. My father sank into a chair, suddenly looking every bit of his 68 years. What are we going to do? If she really did embezzle from her company? The second mortgage, I said, remembering their earlier revelation. How behind are you on the payments? My parents exchanged another worried look. 3 months, my father finally admitted. We've been using our retirement funds to cover expenses, but with the legal fees. You could lose this house, I realized aloud. Your sister promised she would help with the payments once her situation was resolved, my mother said defensively. She just needs time. She's lying to you, Mom, just like she's been lying about everything else. The harsh truth of my words hung in the air between us. For the first time, I could see doubt creeping into my parents' expressions. The golden child's shine was finally beginning to tarnish in their eyes. I went out to the car to check on my children, finding them happily engrossed in their movie. I texted Mark an update, then returned to the kitchen where a tense conversation was still unfolding between my parents and Jake. I'm taking Tyler and Ashley home with me today, Jake was saying firmly. They need stability right now. But Brooke, my mother began. Brooke needs help, Jake replied. Professional help. And she needs to face the consequences of her actions for once in her life. I cleared my throat. I'm going to get our bags from upstairs. Then James, Emma, and I will be leaving too. Leaving? But where are you going? My mother asked, a note of panic in her voice. Back to our home, where my children are valued and respected. Cleo, please, my father pleaded. We need to work this out as a family. We can talk later, I said, my resolve firm. But right now I need space from all of this. As I climbed the stairs to the guest room where our overnight bags had been left, I felt lighter than I had in years. The truth was finally coming to light, painful as it was. And with it came the freedom to make decisions based on reality rather than the distorted version of family loyalty I had been clinging to for so long. Back at home that evening, I sat in the quiet of my home office contemplating my next steps. The children were asleep, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the past 24 hours. Mark was on his way home, his flight scheduled to land in a few hours. My computer screen displayed the Denver job, listing an opportunity that seemed more appealing by the hour. A fresh start, a chance to break the cycle of toxic family dynamics that had defined so much of my life. But first I needed to address the immediate crisis. I picked up my phone and called Robert Collins, my family's longtime lawyer who had handled everything from my parents' will to the purchase of my first home. "Cleo, this is unexpected. How are you?" Robert's familiar voice was comforting. "I've been better, Robert. I'm calling because my family is in trouble and I need some advice." Over the next hour, I explained the situation. Brooke's potential embezzlement charges my parents' financial jeopardy due to the second mortgage, and the years of enabling that had led to this crisis. "This is quite serious," Robert said when I finished. "Your parents could indeed lose their home if they don't address the mortgage situation quickly. And if Brooke is facing potential criminal charges for embezzlement, she needs specialized legal representation immediately. What would you recommend?" First, a financial intervention. Your parents need to understand exactly where they stand financially and what options they have. I can arrange a meeting with a financial advisor who specializes in retirement crisis management. Yes, please do that. Second, a family counseling session might be beneficial. Not to pressure you into forgiveness, but to establish healthy boundaries moving forward. I hesitated at this suggestion, but ultimately agreed. That makes sense, though I doubt Brooke will participate. And third, regarding Brooke's legal situation, I know a good criminal defense attorney who might be able to help, but she needs to be honest about what's happened. By the time we finished our call, a plan was taking shape. Robert would arrange meetings with both the financial advisor and a family counselor for early the following week. In the meantime, I would focus on supporting my children and preparing for my job interview in Denver. Next, I called Jake to check on Tyler and Ashley. "How are they doing?" I asked. "Confused but okay. They miss their mom, but they're happy to be home." "And any word from Brooke?" "Nothing direct. She texted her friend Melissa asking if she could stay with her, but Melissa called me instead. No one knows where she is right now." I felt a pang of worry despite everything. Brooke might be manipulative and selfish, but she was still my sister, and her disappearing act was concerning. "Jake, I've been thinking about the kids. If you need any help with them, rides to school, babysitting, whatever, Mark and I are here for you." "Thanks, Cleo. That means a lot." He paused. "You know, Brooke always made it seem like you didn't want to be involved in our lives, that you were too busy with your career to care about family. She told me similar things about you, that you didn't want the kids spending time with us because you thought we were bad influences." Jake sighed heavily. "She's been playing us against each other for years, hasn't she?" "It seems that way." We agreed to stay in closer contact moving forward, supporting each other and our children through whatever came next. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and began crafting a formal application for the regional marketing director position in Denver. The prospect of relocation was daunting, especially with children settled in schools and friends, but the opportunity for a fresh start was incredibly appealing. Just as I was finishing the application, my phone rang again. It was my mother. "Cleo, please, we need to talk," she said without preamble, her voice strained. "It's late, Mom. Can this wait until tomorrow?" "It's your father," she said, a tremor in her voice. "He's not feeling well. His blood pressure is very high and he's having chest pains. I'm worried." Alarm shot through me. "Have you called an ambulance?" "Not yet. He doesn't want me to make a fuss. But I'm scared, Cleo." "Call 911 right now, Mom. Heart issues aren't something to wait on." "But what about Brooke? She's still not back. And..." "Mom, call 911 first. Brooke is an adult who chose to leave. Dad needs medical attention now." Okay, I'll call. Text me which hospital they take him to. I'll meet you there once Mark gets home to stay with the kids." As I hung up, I felt a complex mix of emotions: concern for my father, frustration with my mother's continued prioritization of Brooke, and a deep sadness that it took a potential health crisis to finally get my mother to reach out to me directly. I texted Mark about the situation, then tried calling Brooke myself. The call went straight to voicemail. "Brooke, it's Cleo. Dad's having chest pains and Mom's calling an ambulance. If you get this, please call me back." While waiting for Mark to arrive home, I continued to field calls and texts from my parents. My father had indeed been taken to Memorial Hospital, and the initial assessment suggested he might be experiencing a mild heart attack. My mother was frantic, alternating between worry for my father and concern about Brooke's whereabouts. When Mark finally arrived home shortly after midnight, I briefed him quickly on the situation. "Go," he said, kissing me. "I'll take care of the kids. Keep me posted." The drive to the hospital gave me time to think. Despite the years of favoritism and hurt, I didn't want anything to happen to my father. But I also knew that this crisis wouldn't erase the fundamental issues in our family dynamic. If anything, it highlighted how dysfunctional we had become, my mother still obsessing over Brooke's disappearance, even as my father faced a potential heart attack. As I pulled into the hospital parking lot, I made a decision. I would be there for my parents during this health crisis, but I would maintain the boundaries I had begun to establish. No more enabling Brooke's behavior. No more accepting second-class status in the family. And no more sacrificing my children's emotional well-being to preserve a harmful status quo. With that resolution firmly in mind, I walked into the hospital, ready to face whatever came next with newfound clarity and strength. The hospital corridor seemed endless as I followed the signs to the cardiac care unit. My footsteps echoed against the polished floors, matching the rapid beating of my heart. When I reached the waiting area, I found my mother pacing frantically, her normally perfect appearance disheveled, her eyes red from crying. "Mom," I called softly. She turned, and for a brief moment, relief flooded her face. Then her expression hardened. "Finally. Where have you been?" "I've been here alone for over an hour." I bit back a retort about having to wait for Mark to get home to care for my children. "How's Dad?" "They're running tests. They think it might be a mild heart attack." Her voice cracked, and Brooke still isn't answering her phone. Of course. Even now, Brooke was a priority. Dad is having a heart attack. Can we please focus on that right now? I am focused on that, but I'm worried about your sister too. She's been gone for hours, and with everything that's happening. A doctor approached before I could respond. "Mrs. Bennett, your husband is stable. It was indeed a mild heart attack, but we caught it early. He'll need to stay for observation, and likely have some further tests, but the prognosis is good." My mother sagged with relief. "Can we see him?" "Briefly. He needs rest." We followed the doctor to a private room where my father lay connected to various monitors. He looked smaller, somehow vulnerable, in a way I had never seen him before. "Dad," I said, gently approaching the bed. He turned his eyes, focusing on me with effort. "Cleo, you came." "Of course I came." "Where's Brooke?" he asked, looking past me to the door. The familiar sting of being second best rippled through me, but I pushed it aside. "We don't know yet, Dad, but I'm sure she'll be here soon." After a few minutes with my father, a nurse suggested we let him rest. Back in the waiting room, my mother collapsed into a chair. "This is all too much," she moaned. "First Brooke's problems, now your father's heart, and the mortgage payment is due next week." "About that," I said, taking the seat beside her. "I spoke with Robert Collins today. He's arranging a meeting with a financial advisor who specializes in situations like yours." "You what?" "Why would you talk to our lawyer behind our backs?" "Because someone needed to take action, Mom. You and Dad are at risk of losing your home. Brooke is facing potential criminal charges. This situation isn't going to resolve itself." My mother's face flushed with anger. "So, you appointed yourself in charge, always thinking you know best." "No, I'm trying to help. There's a difference." "Well, we don't need your kind of help. We can manage our own affairs." "Really?" "Because from where I'm sitting, everything is falling apart. Dad's in the hospital, likely stressed by the financial strain you're under because of Brooke. You've mortgaged your future to bail her out of problems she created. How exactly are you managing?" My voice had risen, drawing the attention of a hospital social worker who was passing by. She paused, assessing the situation. "Is everything all right here?" she asked. "We're fine," my mother said curtly. "Actually, we could use some advice," I countered. "My parents are facing foreclosure on their home due to financial issues, and my father just had a heart attack. Are there resources that might help them?" The social worker, whose badge identified her as Susan Martinez, took a seat across from us. "There are several programs that might be applicable. Financial assistance for medical bills, counseling services, even legal aid for housing issues. My mother looked mortified. We don't need charity. It's not charity, Mrs. Bennett, Susan said gently. These programs exist specifically to help people through difficult times. While my mother reluctantly engaged with Susan about possible resources, I stepped away to call Mark with an update on my father's condition. As I was finishing the call, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Brooke just showed up at the house drunk and demanding to see the kids. I didn't let her in. She drove off erratically. Should I call the police? I texted back immediately. Yes, call them. She shouldn't be driving in that state. Returning to the waiting room, I found Susan still there, now joined by a doctor who was explaining my father's treatment plan to my mother. The most important thing right now is reducing his stress, the doctor was saying. Stress is a major contributor to heart issues, especially at his age. My mother nodded mutely, looking overwhelmed. I'll stay with Mom, I told the doctor. My husband is caring for our children, but I can remain here tonight. After the doctor left, my mother turned to me. Why are you really doing this, Cleo? After walking out on us yesterday, now you're playing the devoted daughter. Her words stung, but I refused to be baited. I'm here because Dad is sick, and you need support. That doesn't mean I've forgotten what happened, or that I'm okay with how you've treated me and my children. Always so dramatic, she muttered. Is it dramatic to want my children to be treated with the same love and respect as Brooke's? Is it dramatic to expect basic human decency from my own family? Susan, who had been discreetly gathering pamphlets on patient resources, looked up at this exchange. It sounds like there's a lot of family history here, she observed carefully. You have no idea, I sighed. We offer family counseling services through the hospital, Susan said. Many families find that health crises bring underlying issues to the surface. My mother started to dismiss this suggestion, but something, perhaps the exhaustion of the day or the reality of my father lying in a hospital bed, seemed to deflate her resistance. Maybe she conceded quietly. It wasn't much, but it was something, a tiny crack in the wall of denial she had built around our family dynamics. Just then, my phone rang. It was Jake again. The police found Brooke, he said, without preamble. She hit a parked car about a mile from our house. No one was hurt, but she's being charged with DUI. They're taking her to the station downtown. I relayed this information to my mother, whose face crumpled in dismay. I need to go to her, she said, immediately standing up. Mom, Dad just had a heart attack. He needs you here. But Brooke is in trouble. Brooke is a grown woman who chose to drive drunk. Dad is in the hospital with a heart condition. Which situation do you think actually requires your presence right now? My mother hesitated, torn between her two children, or rather between her golden child and her husband. The fact that she even had to think about it spoke volumes. Your daughter is right, Susan interjected gently. The police will handle the situation with your other daughter. Your husband needs you now. My mother sank back into her chair, defeated. Everything is falling apart, she whispered. Yes, I agreed softly. But that's what happens when problems are ignored for too long. They don't go away. They get worse until they can't be ignored anymore. In that moment, something shifted in my mother's expression, a recognition perhaps of the truth in my words. For years, she and my father had enabled Brooke's behavior, sweeping problems under the rug, making excuses, and expecting me to accommodate and adapt without complaint. I'll handle the situation with Brooke, I offered. You stay with Dad. Why would you do that? After everything. Because that's what family does, Mom. Real family, not the dysfunctional version we've been living with. We show up for each other even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I left the hospital with Susan's contact information and a promise to return in the morning. The drive to the police station gave me time to reflect on the ironies of the situation. After years of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who never caused problems here, I was bailing out my sister from yet another crisis of her own making. At the station, I found Brooke sitting on a bench in the processing area. Her makeup smeared her expression, alternating between defiance and fear. What are you doing here? She asked when she saw me. Come to gloat. No, Brooke. I came to help you, though God knows why. Where's Mom? At the hospital with Dad, who just had a heart attack. Remember him. Your father. Shame flickered across her face, quickly replaced by her typical defensiveness. How was I supposed to know that would happen? You weren't. But you also weren't answering your phone because you were too busy getting drunk and terrorizing Jake and your children. The booking officer called Brooke's name, and I followed them to complete the paperwork for her release. The officer explained the charges: DUI, reckless driving, leaving the scene of an accident. Brooke would need to appear in court next month and would likely lose her license. Great. How am I supposed to get around without a car? Brooke complained as we left the station. Maybe you should have thought about that before driving drunk, I replied, my patience wearing thin. In the car, Brooke was uncharacteristically quiet. I'd expected more complaints, more blame shifting, more manipulation. Her silence was almost unnerving. Where should I take you? I asked. Mom and Dad's house. I guess. Not like I have anywhere else to go. She stared out the window. Jake won't let me come home. My so-called friends won't answer my calls. I lost my job. Everything's ruined. There was something raw and vulnerable in her voice that gave me pause. For all her manipulation and entitlement, Brooke was still human, still capable of suffering. You know, Brooke, it doesn't have to be this way, I said carefully. There are people who can help you get your life back on track. Counselors, financial advisors, support groups. Easy for you to say. Your life is perfect. No, it's not. But I deal with my problems instead of running from them or expecting others to fix them for me. Is that what I do? Her question seemed genuine, a rare moment of self-reflection. Yes, Brooke. That's exactly what you do. And Mom and Dad have enabled it your entire life. She was silent again for several minutes. Then I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to be any other way. It was the most honest thing I'd ever heard her say. That's why you need professional help. And not just for your sake, but for Tyler and Ashley too. They deserve a mother who's present and stable. As we pulled into our parents' driveway, Brooke turned to me. Why are you being nice to me after everything I've done? Because you're my sister. And because I believe people can change if they truly want to. I'm not sure I can. That's the first step, Brooke. Recognizing that there's a problem. Inside the house, I helped Brooke settle in, making sure she drank water and took aspirin for the hangover that would inevitably come. As I was preparing to leave, I noticed a manila folder on the kitchen counter labeled Medical Records Brooke. Curiosity got the better of me. I flipped open the folder and scanned the top document, a psychiatric evaluation from 3 years ago. The diagnosis jumped out at me. Patient exhibits clear indicators of narcissistic personality disorder with manipulative tendencies. The report went on to recommend intensive therapy and possibly medication. From the dates on the follow-up notes, it appeared Brooke had attended exactly 2 therapy sessions before quitting. Another document caught my eye, a letter from the therapist to my parents, expressing concern that their enabling behavior was exacerbating Brooke's condition, making it unlikely she would ever develop healthier coping mechanisms. The pieces finally clicked into place. My parents had known about Brooke's psychological issues for years, but had chosen to enable her rather than push her toward real help. Their guilt and misplaced sense of protection had created the perfect environment for her manipulative behavior to flourish. I closed the folder, a strange sense of clarity washing over me. The dynamics that had shaped our family for decades hadn't been my imagination. They were real, documented and acknowledged, just never addressed or healed. As I drove home in the early hours of the morning, exhausted but oddly at peace, I knew that the breaking point had finally been reached. The old patterns couldn't continue. Whether my parents and Brooke chose to change or not, I had to move forward with my own life, creating healthy boundaries for myself and my children. The Denver job opportunity beckoned like a lighthouse, guiding me toward a future defined by possibility rather than pain. 6 months later, I stood in the spacious kitchen of our new home in Denver, watching the Colorado sunshine stream through the windows. James and Emma were in the backyard playing with the puppy we had adopted shortly after moving, a golden retriever mix named Sunshine, who had quickly become an essential part of our family. The transition hadn't been easy. Moving across states with 2 young children, starting a new position with greater responsibilities, helping Mark find a job in his field, each step had required courage and persistence. But standing here now, watching my children laugh in the sunshine, I knew we had made the right decision. My phone chimed with a FaceTime call from my father. I answered, smiling, as his face appeared on the screen. "Hi, Dad. How are you feeling today?" "Better than ever," he replied. And it was true. The health scare had been a wake-up call for him. Under doctor's supervision, he had changed. His diet started a gentle exercise regimen, and perhaps most importantly, reduced the stress in his life. The grandkids around. Your mother wants to say hello. They're in the backyard. I'll get them. I called the children in, and they crowded around the phone, chattering excitedly about school, their new friends, and Sunshine's latest antics. My mother appeared beside my father, her smile warm as she listened to her grandchildren. The change in my parents over the past 6 months had been remarkable. After my father's heart attack, they had finally confronted the reality of their situation, both the financial crisis and the unhealthy family dynamics they had fostered. With the help of the financial advisor Robert had arranged, they had sold their large house and moved into a comfortable retirement community, using the equity to pay off their debts and establish a more sustainable lifestyle. More significantly, they had agreed to family counseling. The first few sessions had been painful, with years of resentment and enabling behaviors laid bare. But gradually, with the therapist's guidance, we had begun to build healthier patterns of communication and boundaries. We got the flowers you sent for our anniversary, my mother said, once the children had returned to their play. They're beautiful, Cleo. Thank you. You're welcome. 40 years is quite an achievement. We've been thinking, my father said, exchanging a glance with my mother. We'd like to come visit next month if that works for you all. We haven't seen the new house except in photos. We'd love that, I replied sincerely. The guest room is all set up, and there's lots to explore in Denver. After we hung up, I marveled at how far we had come. My parents now made an effort to treat James and Emma with the same love and attention they showed to Tyler and Ashley. They respected my boundaries and acknowledged their past favoritism instead of denying it. Most importantly, they had stopped enabling Brooke's destructive behavior. Brooke herself had faced a reckoning. The embezzlement charges couldn't be avoided, but with a good lawyer and her willingness to make full restitution, she had managed to avoid jail time. Instead, she was on probation and required to attend both therapy and financial counseling as part of her plea agreement. Her initial resistance to therapy had gradually given way to grudging participation and eventually genuine engagement. The diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder had been confirmed, but with consistent treatment, she was learning to recognize and manage her manipulative tendencies. Jake had filed for divorce, but they were working on a co-parenting arrangement that put Tyler and Ashley's needs first. Surprisingly, without our parents' enabling presence, Brooke and I had established a more honest relationship. We would never be best friends, but we could be civil, even supportive in a limited way. A text from Mark interrupted my thoughts. Meeting finished early, picking up ingredients for dinner on the way home. Love you. I smiled, grateful once again for his unwavering support through all the family turmoil. He had been my rock, never pressuring me to cut ties completely, but always backing my decisions to establish healthier boundaries. The regional marketing director position had proven to be exactly the challenge and opportunity I needed. My team was creative and dedicated, and the Westfield account had expanded under my direction. The company culture valued work-life balance, allowing me to be present for my family in ways my previous job hadn't. Sunday, dinners had become a new tradition in our home. Sometimes it was just the four of us. Sometimes friends joined, and when my parents visited, they were welcomed at the table. Everyone had an equal voice, equal portions, equal respect. The painful memory of that takeout order 6 months ago had been transformed into a powerful lesson about self-worth and family dynamics. As I prepared a snack for the children, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. It had begun with pain, the shock of hearing my mother's cruel words about my children eating scraps, the humiliation of being treated as a servant in my family home. But that pain had been necessary, a catalyst for change that had been long overdue. The most profound lesson I had learned was that standing firm with love could be the greatest gift you could give a dysfunctional family. By refusing to perpetuate unhealthy patterns, by establishing clear boundaries while remaining compassionate, I had helped create space for genuine healing and growth, not just for myself and my children, but for my parents and even Brooke. Later that evening, as we gathered around our dining table, I looked at the faces of my husband and children illuminated in the warm light. James was describing an art project at school, his hands gesturing animatedly. Emma was giggling at Sunshine, who sat hopefully beside her chair. Mark caught my eye across the table and smiled a silent acknowledgement of the peace we had found. Mom, can Tyler and Ashley come visit during summer vacation, James asked suddenly. Dad said we could take them hiking in the mountains. That's a wonderful idea, I replied, touched by my son's desire to maintain the cousin relationship despite the geographic distance and family complications. I'll talk to Uncle Jake about it. And can we make them a special dinner? Emma chimed in. With everyone's favorite foods? Absolutely. Everyone deserves to feel special and welcome at our table. The simple truth of that statement resonated deeply. Everyone deserves to feel valued, to have a place at the table, to be treated with dignity and respect, especially by family. It had taken a painful confrontation and significant life changes for me to fully embrace that truth, but the journey had been worth it. As the evening wound down and the children prepared for bed, I stepped onto our back porch to admire the sunset painting the Colorado sky in shades of gold and pink. The mountains in the distance stood resolute and strong, a reminder of my own newfound strength. The phone call that had changed everything, reaching out to Robert for legal and financial advice, had been just the first step on this path. Each decision that followed, from accepting the job in Denver to establishing clear boundaries with my family, had required courage. But courage, I had discovered, was like a muscle that grew stronger with use. I thought about all the people who might be trapped in similar family dynamics, accepting mistreatment as normal, making excuses for toxic behavior, sacrificing their own well-being and that of their children in the name of family. Peace. If my story could help even one person find the courage to stand up for themselves, to demand the respect they deserved, it would give additional meaning to my own painful journey. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family harmony and self-respect? What boundaries have you established in your own relationships to protect your well-being? I'd love to hear your stories and insights in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for joining me on this journey of healing and transformation. Remember, sometimes the greatest act of love, both for yourself and others, is having the courage to say enough.